Welcome back, sports fans. I forgot about one trade the Pistons made yesterday involving Trevor Ariza. As part of a three-way trade with the Mavericks and Thunder, Trevor Ariza was sent to the Thunder along with an undisclosed second-round selection by the Pistons for DeLon Wright, whom they got from the Mavericks, and then Justin Jackson will go from the Mavericks to the Thunder as part of that trade. Now, to talk about the Pistons roster in this segment, which I will do, and since I'd forgotten about that, I was having to factor that in on the fly. As of right now, about 70% of the Pistons roster, actually I'd say more like 75%, has now been turned over in the last 3 or 4 days. And as of right now, it looks like this. At point guard, you have Killian Hayes and Saben Lee, along with Derrick Rose, who presumably will start for right now, if he's still with the Pistons on opening day, and I'll get to that in a minute. Jordan Bone, who is an unrestricted free agent, and Brandon Knight. I don't think they're going to re-sign Jordan Bone because Dwayne Casey was not happy with the amount of effort he put in to playing basketball. And he otherwise didn't play that much anyway until not long before the NBA shut down prior to the bubble playoff. The way I see this is this. Depending on whether or not they trade Derrick Rose before the start of the season, if they do not, he will start. Killian Hayes will get, I don't know how many minutes offhand, but I imagine 15 or 20, I would think. And then Saben Lee will have to work his way somehow in the rotation, but will otherwise be a distant bench player. So then that leaves in the balance what happens with Brandon Knight. Well, the way I see it, I don't think he's going to re-sign with the Pistons. So now you're down to 3 point guards, and I think Derrick Rose is destined to be traded. To whom may be debatable, but if I were the Pistons, I would have done it last year because I don't think Derrick Rose is going to have the same kind of season this year as he did last year when he had a career year. But eventually, I do see Killian Hayes being the starting point guard and probably sometime in the next season, along with Saben Lee coming off the bench for support. And then where that situation goes from there remains to be seen, but I think this is where DeLon Wright comes in because he provides a veteran presence. But how he's going to factor into that, I don't know. He may see a little bit at both guard spots. The shooting guards as of right now are Langston Galloway, who is an unrestricted free agent, Rodney McGruder, who they just got, and I'll talk about him a little bit more in a minute, Jordan McRae, and Svetoslav Mihalik. Now, Langston Galloway is an unrestricted free agent. However, I think it's important the Pistons re-sign him because I see him as being the starting guard in that spot if it's not Rodney McGruder. But I don't think it'll be him. Now, there's talks that Rodney McGruder will be waived. And if that happens, then that frees up another spot. Jordan McRae, I think, will be released, and then you'll be down to 3 shooting guards with Mr. Mihalik as part of that. Pistons right now only have 3 small forwards. They have Josh Jackson, who they just got. They have Sekou Doumbia and Lewis King, who is a restricted free agent. Assuming they're going to retain Lewis King, because I don't know that you only want to have 2 small forwards, I would say Josh Jackson will start and Sekou Doumbia will come off the bench. However, eventually I can see where he and Killian Hayes are going to make up the Pistons' French connection. And I'm excited to see how that's going to go. At power forward, you have Blake Griffin, and I'll get to him in a minute. You have John Henson, who's an unrestricted free agent. And then Dzanan Musa, who they just got from the Nets earlier this week, and Saddiq Bey, who they just drafted on Wednesday. Blake Griffin is destined to be traded. I would trade him ASAP. I was saying they need to trade him last season. They didn't. And I think you can still get a couple of second round draft selections for him. But if he gets injured one more time, he may not have much or any value left. So I would trade him before the start of the season as well. I don't think they're going to re-sign John Henson, who they got in the Andre Drummond trade from the Cavaliers last year. So that leaves them with Dazan Musa and Sadiq Bey. And I think it'll be a competition to see who the starting power forward is between those two. But presumably you would think that Dazan Musa, having played in the NBA for a few years, would have an edge in that department. But I do think eventually Sadiq Bey is going to be like Tayshaun Prince and eventually take over that role. And then your starting centers are, as of right now, Dwayne Dedmon, Justin Patton, Mason Plumlee, who I project to be a starting center, though he could play some forward, and Isaiah Stewart. Okay, Isaiah Stewart they just drafted, and they just signed Mason Plumlee. So I don't believe they're going anywhere. Dwayne Dedmon's been rumored that they may release him as well to free up more salary. So that'll be interesting to see, because why would you have traded two young players for him if you were just merely going to do a salary release? And I'm not going to use the other term they associate with that, but I'm aware of what they call it. And then Justin Patton is a restricted free agent. However, I would say they're going to let him go. So based on that, I see the Pistons rosters being Killian Hayes, Saben Lee at point guard, Derrick Rose for the time being if he's not traded before the start of the season. And then at shooting guard, Langston Galloway, who they need to re-sign, Rodney Magruder if they don't waive him, Svetoslav Mihalik, and then at small forward, Josh Jackson, Sekou Doumbia, and hopefully Lewis King. And then again, power forward, Blake Griffin, if he's still around by the start of the season, Dazan Musa, and Sadiq Bey. And then at center, Mason Plumlee and Isaiah Stewart, whom they just drafted. I think I didn't mention that before. So that leaves, and if I believe my count is correct, I have 15 players currently. If you count Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin. Otherwise, they're going to be down to 13 if I'm correct. And I'm just checking my math right now. Bear with me as I'm doing this on the fly. Yeah, 14 players if they waive Rodney Magruder and Dwayne Dedmon, provided that Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin are on the starting roster or the opening day roster. If they're not, it'll be interesting to see what kind of adjustments are made for that. I think that, for the most part, is your new look Pistons team for the next season. I'm not ruling out any more moves, certainly. I certainly believe that Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose are destined to be traded. So we'll see what happens with that. And that will do it for this NBA draft special. I do want to make one comment, though. I had mentioned to somebody I was going to talk a little bit about the Luke Kennard trade. I believe the reason that Luke Kennard was traded to the Clippers, and that, if I recall correctly, was part of the deal that eventually brought Sadiq Bey, or the Sadiq Bey selection at 19 to the Pistons, as that was a three-way trade from the Nets and the Clippers. And if it wasn't, I'll correct it below. But Luke Kennard was going to become a free agent anyway after this season, and I believe don't remember if it was a restricted free agent or an unrestricted free agent, but even though he was a good player, if he was going to be an unrestricted free agent, they weren't going to sign him, and I would assume, based on the moves that have been made, he didn't really factor into the Pistons' future plans. And then the other thing before I go is I want to thank all of you once again for your patience in that, and I'm thankful for the 3 new subscribers who have signed up in the last few days. I'm very appreciative of that, especially with everything that was going on with me. And this has more than kept me busy for sure. We're now past, in the last few weeks, we've gone past 10 and past 15 subscribers. My cup runneth over, and I thank you for that. And that will do it for another episode. That will do it for this NBA wrap-up special. Don't forget about the Detroit Lions tomorrow on Wednesday. And then on Friday, I will have the college football wrap-up where I discuss the Wolverines game with the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers. Have a good day. For those of you who are out on the road, drive safely. Enjoy yourself. And try to have a happy Thanksgiving as best you can. And I hope all of you do. Take care and goodbye for now.